And there's different examples of it that we've given. But the example here is, if you remember that fancy diagram we had of the egg and the chickens, so the chicken and the eggs. So I won't go back to that now. It'll only delay us too long to completely recap everything. But we had the arising of say pot, the basic root phenomena, and then the fact of arising, the quality of arising, it had a causal role to play. So the arising was an action, which has a causative role, which makes pot come into existence. And this is like this is the way arising works for conditioned phenomena, which of course have the three characteristics of arising, lasting, and ceasing. So the first one, they all work in a causal way, causing their phenomena to arise, last, or cease. But if you say that the arising causes the pot to arise, then they come along and say, well, if this arising is a conditioned phenomena, isn't there arising that has to make it arise? So before arising can make pot arise, there must be an arising which makes the arising of pot arise. So we had that danger of a kind of endless regression or whatever. So they say, no, see, there is an arising which makes the arising of pot arise, and the arising of pot makes that arising arise in turn. So you don't have to have an endless succession of characteristics. You have the basic phenomena, you have the primary characteristics, and the secondary characteristics. So the primary arising is making everything arise, all the other factors, including the pot. That's like the chicken laying all the eggs. And the primary arising makes the secondary arising of arising arise, as well as the arising making the arising arise. So the arising needs something to make it arise, so that's the arising of arising. But instead of the arising of arising need a third, arising to make it arise, it's simply a mutual cause and effect situation between the arising of arising and arising. Arising of arising causes arising of pot arise, and the arising of pot causes the arising of arising to arise. So that they had that mutual causal situation to get out of this endless sort of regression kind of, danger or criticism. So that was completely rejected by Nagarjuna, and also by the Sautrantikas, the other kind of Abhidharma originating schools. So it's not just the middle wayers who are rejecting it. Mind only is a little bit different. Their cause and effect presentation is a bit sort of, unique to themselves, and has its own kind of, oddness to it, like blue and the icons are seeing blue. How do they arise for the mind onlys? What do you say, Francois? Is blue the cause of the icons seeing blue in the mind only school? Francois?
Yes, Michela.
Yes.
Is blue the cause of the eye consciousness apprehending blue for Chittamatra?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, that's the answer I would give. And what's your little explanation? Any brief explanation of that?
Because the object condition is the imprint.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very little explanation. Yeah, well, I have them both arising, they're both arising from the same causal seed. So you make this sort of gesture. So the blue and the icons apprehending blue, they arise from the same imprint or the same sort of, seed on the consciousness, and do that. So they're rising simultaneously, and they appear to split into subject and object, but the subject and object is sort of arising simultaneously like that. Are you with me? Everybody's a little bit familiar with the mind-only view, so I don't really feel I have to explain it much. We had Geshe Namdak here this last weekend, giving his explanation of the mind-only view on Zoom. So he's only here on Zoom. I mean, it wasn't really here. Yeah. So the mind is a bit apart. They say this blue being the sort of observed object condition, therefore a cause of the eye consciousness seeing blue. That's an illusion. So they're out on their own a bit. But otherwise, the middlewares and the sutra followers very critical of this idea of mutual simultaneous production, which verse 5, 6, and 7 was really just making that very clear. And I think we can understand that without too much trouble. It's not one of Nagarjuna's really tricky points. If you've got A causing B and B causing A, two things. So A is going to cause B and B is going to cause A. But it's mutual causation. So A cannot cause B until B has made A arise. B is the cause of A, so B has got to be there for A to arise. But B can't arise unless A causes it. So A is waiting for B to cause it, and B is waiting for A to cause it. So it never takes off. Because the cause can't exist until the other things brought it into existence. But so it can't be a cause of that, because this one hasn't brought that one into existence, So it's just complete stalemate or something. Just sort of nothing ever happens. So that's that was the little kind of that's the sort of the argument of the verse 5, 6, and 7. But the opponent doesn't give up, you see. So he has to say, okay, well, maybe causal mutual simultaneous production is not such a good idea after all. So what else can I say? It's even more ridiculous. Well, he starts saying that arising gives rise to itself, The arising that makes pot arise, it just arises by itself. It doesn't need another arising to produce it. It makes itself arise. And of course, it makes pot arise. The arising of pot would make pot arise, but it arises causing itself somehow. So I'm not sure this is a great expositionist view that something just causes itself to arise. So I don't know why Nagarjuna has put it in. But maybe I'm missing something. So maybe there is a school that tried to explain things like that. I've not heard of it, but anyway, it does lead to necessitates another refutation by Nagarjuna. So this is where we got to, verse number 8. So then the statement is, the statement is always by the opponent, right? The statement is by the person who's, feeling the weight of Nagarjuna's criticism, or trying to tell Nagarjuna he's got it all wrong. Statement at the bottom of page 9. Yeah, we're going into the introduction to verse number 8. Little tricky section here. Statement: even if no other arising gives rise to it, still arising gives rise to its own and others' entities too. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. See, he just says, start saying, well, arising just causes itself to arise. We don't need another arising to make arising arise. It just arises, causes itself to arise, and it causes pot and whatever quite conveniently as well. So this is completely unacceptable, but Nagarjuna takes his refutation so far that it's hard to follow him, I would say, but we must try. Because he says, just as a lamp illuminates its own and others' entities, arising too may make arise both own and others' entities. So that's the opponent, you see. That's Nagarjuna's putting those words in the opponent's mouth. So how does arising make itself arise and something else beside itself? Oh, well, it's just like a lamp, a lamp illuminates itself and other entities too. So this is we've come across this in chapter 9 in Shantideva, those of us who studied that. So this is a kind of the lamp illuminating itself. This question has arisen in other texts, but I guess Shantideva would be kind of getting it from Nagarjuna, because Nagarjuna is the precedes Shantideva, but where Nagarjuna is getting it from, I'm not sure. But Shantideva has, when he's trying to refute these self-cognizers, he uses the same kind of example. The opponent uses the same example to justify the self-cognizer. The mind knowing itself. The mind can know itself and other entities. You see, the mind must know itself and other entities. But this is something that's completely unacceptable to Shantideva and all the Madhyamika kind of geniuses like Chandrakirti. No. You can't have a mind knowing itself. You can't have a lamp illuminating itself. But it's hard to agree sometimes. So that's their example anyway. So we've got a justification for our arising explanation. It's just like a lamp. So just as a lamp not only illuminates itself, but also illuminates other things such as pots and cloth, likewise, arising too not only gives rise to itself, but also gives rise to other things such as pot and cloth. So that's the opponent's position. And here comes our reply, that's completely unacceptable. Response. If a lamp could illuminate its own and others' entities, arising as you would wish, might also give rise to its own and others' entities, similar to the lamp. A lamp does not illuminate its own or others' entities. What reason? So they completely disagree. But they're not just saying a lamp doesn't illuminate itself. So they're not just saying arising doesn't cause itself. It's like that's the critical issue. Does arising cause itself? Does the lamp illuminate itself? Well, no. But it's actually saying, see, that the lamp doesn't illuminate its own or others' entities. So the lamp doesn't illuminate anything. So that's the really kind of that's the really difficult bit here. Okay, the lamp maybe, if you think about it, it doesn't illuminate itself, but surely illuminates other entities. So that's quite worrying. Why is that so difficult to understand? But that's what they're saying. So we've got to give our reasons for what we say. That's Nagarjuna and Buddhapalita. So what do they say? What reason? Since there is no darkness in a lamp, nor in the place where it is set. Well, we can on the face of it that we accept that. When you look in the lamp, you're not going to see darkness, are you? And the whole point of the lamp is that there is no darkness where the lamp is. That the lamp's just cleared away the darkness or something. So why would you expect there to be darkness in the lamp or in the place where it is set? Well, but what does that mean then? Well, what Buddhapalita says it means. Here it is the unilluminated that is made illuminated. Well, that's true, yeah. You can only illuminate something that isn't already illuminated. If it's already illuminated, you're not illuminating anything, it's already illuminated. And the lack of illumination is due to a covering of darkness. Fair enough. Yeah, so you haven't got illumination, you'll have darkness. And you might not even see the objects because they're covered by darkness. Darkness will obscure the objects. But since there is no darkness in a lamp, there is no lack of illumination in a lamp. So that's, you could sort of work your way towards understanding that. Well, okay, there is no darkness in a lamp. As soon as the lamp is lit, there's no darkness. I mean, here I think we're talking about a lit lamp, yeah? When we say there is no darkness in a lamp, we mean the lamp that's illuminated. Okay. And I think we have to work that out. We have to sort of take that in trust, you know, that here we're talking about a lamp that is lit. Remember, what kind of lamps did those guys have in those days? Well, very, very small, just little oil lamps, I guess, a little dish with a little wick in it. And the little wick would be like on the side of the dish and it's half sticking out of the oil, whatever it would be, mustard oil, whatever they use in old India. So you'd have a very simple like that, a little lamp like that in your cell in the London monastery in India, I guess. But you know, it doesn't really matter what kind of lamp, but they would give very limited light. But once the lamp is lit, you know, it is a lamp in the sense it's a lit lamp, then there's no darkness there. Be cleared away. So as soon as the light is there, there's no dark there. So what does it mean? The arrival of the illumination and the disappearance of the darkness is simultaneous? So it's not that the arrival of lamp is the arrival of light is removing the darkness. But you think, well, it's yeah. Well, what would you think? I don't know. Anyway, let's read on a bit. The statement that the lamp, you know, illuminates others is also not correct, which is even more challenging. Now, this is really challenging. So the lamp doesn't illuminate anything else either. There is no darkness in the other entities where the lamp is set either. Due to the absence of darkness, there is no lack of illumination in them either. Well then, if its own and others' entities do not lack illumination, explain this. How does a lamp illuminate? Yeah, so once the lamp is there and it's done its work, then there is no darkness. But that's because the lamp has cleared the darkness away, you think. The lamp has cleared the dark away, so then the lamp has illuminated something because it's cleared the dark away, even if not from itself, then from these other things. So, you know, it's quite difficult to think where Nagarjuna is coming from at this point. But any help you can give, very welcome. So he's saying if there's light there, there's no dark. So how can the light clear away the dark? Well, the light's made the darkness disappear, hasn't it? So obviously there's never going to be no light. The light that the lamp has illuminated, you know, obviously there is going to be no dark because the lamp has cleared it away. But he seems to be saying the lamp and the arrival of the lamp and the disappearance of the dark are simultaneous, perhaps. But is it really like that? You know, if we know about science a bit, we say, well, light travels at a very fast speed. In English, we say 186,000 miles per second. How fast does light travel in kilometers? Do you know, Yael?
No clue.
No clue?
No clue.
300,000, 300,000 and 30,000, something like this. 330,000.
Do you know, Francois?
Yeah, I think it's 300,000 kilometers an hour, I think.
Yeah, that would sound similar.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, so really fast. But nevertheless, it is traveling. So that, you know, the light arrives, but there's a tiny second, you know, when the lamp's lit, a tiny minute fraction of a time when the light of the lamp is traveling outwards, and then it is, as it's traveling outwards, it's destroying the darkness. It's contacting the darkness and sort of consuming it or making it disappear. So you would think that first there's illumination and eventually there is clearing away of darkness, even though it happens very fast. But you know, what are these? These kind of middle wayers? Are they thinking like that? Presumably not, because they're no idea about scientific measurements of that kind. But is that kind of, you know, a difficulty here? Well, we'll read on. So we go from verse 8 to number 12 here. So we'll see try to follow the rest of the argument, and then because this was a difficult section, I did translate it all in the back in another note, all Tom Carper's commentary. Often he does, you know, enable you to crack the problem because he gives you a little bit more help. But on this occasion, I'm not sure. Okay, so we say, well, how does the lamp illuminate then? There's no darkness in the lamp. There's no darkness in the objects that the lamp's illuminating. So how's the lamp illuminate? So the opponent kind of he seems to accept that, and says, well, illumination is the clearing of darkness. So that's what we mean by illumination, lighting up. You know, something's lit up. It means that you're clearing the darkness away from it, so it becomes visible. So here, 9D then. So this is the opponent speaking, I guess. He's trying to, you know, defend his view. And he takes a slightly kind of interesting turn here in trying to defend his view. Here, the clearing away of darkness, i.e. illumination, is accomplished by the lamp that is arising. So he's kind of accepting at the time of the lit lamp, the time when the light is, you know, it's a proper lamp, then there is no darkness. So the light's got nothing to fight against or something. So that's not clearing away the darkness. So it's the arising lamp that clears away the darkness. And this is the opponent speaking. It's the lamp that is arising that accomplishes the illumination. So it is the lamp that is arising, so it illuminates. Thus we say that eradicating darkness is the illuminating by a lamp of its own and others' entities. But when you say, well, what is the lamp that's doing the illuminating? He says, well, it's the arising lamp. But we'd say the arising lamp isn't a lamp, surely. Or is it? What do they mean by a rising lamp? You know, if we said a rising sprout, to me that means it's not a sprout, it's on the way to being a sprout. You know, it hasn't become a sprout yet. But a rising lamp, is that what they mean? Or tiny, tiny light that's just been lit and it's just gradually getting a bigger flame as it gets going, you know, sort of like a little oil lamp. It begins with a little tiny flame and then becomes bigger and bigger until it reaches full size. Is that the arising lamp? Or the arising lamp before there's any light at all? That's hard to think of. How would that be clearing away darkness? Yeah. But that's the opponent, you see. That's not us. That's the opponent saying that. Okay, the risen lamp, the proper lamp, the lamp that's actually burning and it's fully illuminating, well, it's not clearing away darkness. So we're saying that's not illuminating itself or other things. It's the arising lamp. So the opponent goes on, hence what was said, there is no darkness in a lamp, nor in the place where it is set, is to say that darkness having been extinguished by the arising lamp, there is no darkness in the entity of the lamp itself or in others. From there being no darkness, there is indeed illumination. That it's by its clearing away of the darkness, the lamp illuminates its own and others' entities. Yeah, so which lamp is it? It's the arising lamp that does it. That's the one that actually does the clearing away of the darkness. So it's right then to say, because the arising lamp does it, that the lamp illuminates its own and others' entities, no problem. We've identified which lamp it is, it's the arising lamp. And as with a lamp, so too, it is correct to say that arising is a causer of the arising of its own and others' entities. Yeah, so just like that, arising. But we're staying with a lamp here, you know, to arguing about that now. So there's a tricky bit. Gotta help me, help. You know, if you want to read an easy book, or well, easy, I mean, a book which, you know, lays out Nagarjuna's thought in a masterful manner, you read something like that book by His Holiness, The Middle Way, is it called? The Middle Way, Faith Grounded in Reason. So that's like a book, you know, one of these Tubdan Jimpa translations of His Holiness's talk on Nagarjuna, Fundamental Wisdom Stanzas. So he chooses the, you know, 4 chapters that are kind of the more well-studied chapters towards the end of the book, you know, the 18th chapter on the selfless, and the 24th chapter on the Four Noble Truths, you know, and the 26th chapter is maybe on the 12 links, you know, and then he does a masterful, Dalai Lama does a masterful, you know, overview of what Nagarjuna is on about, and he just gently smooths over all the difficult points, you know, and just chooses the bits that we can all understand, and then, you know, because all this is Nagarjuna's wonderful view of emptiness and dependent arising. And if you look at his book on Shantadeva's 9th chapter, you know, Shantadeva's wisdom chapter, he's doing exactly that. Whenever he comes to a verse where, you know, you've got to really dig in and say, what on earth is Shantadeva actually trying to say here? In Nagarjuna, His Holiness just gives you the general overview, you know, what he ought to be saying if you just simplified it a little bit. Well, I mean, fair enough, I'm not so criticizing, because Dalai Lama has a week in which they give a commentary. He can't comment on every little tiny point. No, he's going to go for the main points, and the ones that are a little bit difficult, he's going to just smooth over them. Fair enough, it's that kind of commentary. So you can do that with Nagarjuna, but I didn't want to do that. I just sort of, which is the chapter which is, you know, in Sanskrit or something, and let's just go through it, you know, word by word, and see what it really feels like to have Nagarjuna on the ground, you know, wrestling with, you know, his arguments bit by bit, instead of just trying to sort of get the overview and see how masterful it is in the big picture, but, you know, just say, well, take it as it comes, you know. So here we are. Okay, so the opponent's got his little explanation. It's the arising lamp that clears away the darkness, and that sounds to us very suspect. Maybe, you know, the arising lamp, is that actually a lamp? How would there be any light? Could something without light clear away darkness, etc.? But maybe they didn't. What do they mean by arising lamp? Not really explained. So I'm not saying that's that view of the arising lamp is complete nonsense. You know, we'll see how that's taken up, at least by Tsongkhapa. So don't dismiss that arising lamp as being the impossible thing. Anyway, Buddhapalita says, response, this that you say, that the clearing away of darkness is done by a lamp which is arising, do explain it. So Nagarjuna comes in with his verse, you know, really casting into a question on the opponent's view. How is the darkness cleared away? By means of an arising lamp, when an arising lamp does not make contact with the dark at all. So this is supposed to be a killer blow. The arising lamp doesn't make contact with the darkness. So how can it clear away the darkness? So what does that mean? It makes contact with the darkness. Help!
Because both are mutually, mutually contradictory. When there is one like cold and hot, we cannot find one on the other, on the same place as the other, maybe.
Yeah, it's something like that. You know, if there's light there isn't any darkness. Like Jimbo, I don't know if you can hear him through the microphone saying, well, if there is heat there, how would there be any cold? So how does the heat make cold with the make contact with the cold? You say, well, it pushes it away. The heat arrives, and as the heat arrives, the cold is disappearing. So there's a sort of a boundary between the heat and the cold. You know, as the cold advances from the hot stove, as it gets hotter, then the cold recedes. So there is the cold. The heat is pushing back the heat is pushing back the cold. So there is contact. That boundary point.
I would say that this boundary is not any contact between both. It's just like how we say in French, we say tiède. tiède.
Tiède.
It's like not cold and not very cold, not very warm. It's
In between.
in between.
Well, yeah. I mean, or you can say once the cold heat has arrived, there is no cold. So how do they contact each other? If there's light, there's no darkness in that place. Or you can have a state of half light, half dark. I don't know. You know. So this is his claim, you know, that to clear away the darkness, the lamp would have to contact it. So they're taking this arising lamp seriously, and Tsongkhapa takes it seriously. So I think it's supposed to be the refutation of an inherently arising lamp, or an inherently existent arising lamp, not that the arising lamp hasn't got its part to play on a conventional level. So difficult. So this is, now you have to understand what contact means. So we're not quite sure. So I mean, I think the Tsongkhapa gives at one point, he gives an example of like the water flowing down a valley into the sea or into a big lake in Tibet, you know. So the water makes contact with the lake. They have to be both there in the same place at the same time to make contact. And that's kind of their idea, a principle of contact. The two have to be there in the same place at the same time. So if your left hand touches your right hand, you know, they have to be there, like both have to be there, you know, at the same time as each other, like just touching each other. But doesn't that happen with light and dark in some sort of similar type of way? Well, no, according to Buddhapalita, who's commenting on verse number 10, since lamp and dark are non-existent in one location, so that's the lit lamp, you see, the light and the dark then are non-existent in one location. So an arising lamp does not make any contact with darkness. How then could darkness be cleared away by a lamp that it has not had contact with? So if the lamp and dark cannot exist in one location, even the arising lamp and the darkness cannot make any contact. They can't be in the same location. So Buddhapalita seems to be classing the arising lamp as a lamp. So maybe the arising lamp has a tiny bit of light. I don't know.
Käsikrajan.
Hello?
Hello, Käsikrajan.
Yes.
I was just wondering about this arising lamp. I mean, could it mean a lamp that is being lit? So in the process of becoming, you know, lit, because it makes no sense if it's, you know, an arising lamp, actually. I don't know, it just came to my mind.
Yeah. So if it's before it's been illuminated, like before you switch the electricity on, then there's just darkness everywhere. So that wouldn't, how could that be doing anything? So the arising lamp you think is a lamp with a little tiny light that's got going slightly or something. The first tiny moments of light before it's pervaded through the room or something.
I don't know what kind of lamps they had. I mean, was the light coming gradually or all at once? I don't really know. Was it with a fire?
They would have little oil lamps, wouldn't they? And Tibetan mine butter lamps. So they have just a little bit of oil in a cup or a dish, and little twist of cotton or something as a wick.
So I mean, if the light is coming then gradually, then it could mean arising. I don't know. Just a guess.
Yeah. And then you take a coal out of the fire or something like that, you know, and you just kind of keep blowing on the coal to get it as hot as you could, and then you touch it to the wick, and then it would make the wick jump into flame when it got hot enough. Something like that, you know. Just well, and like a candle, when you light a candle, first of all, it's a very small light, and gradually it becomes bigger as the wax melts. So that could be the arising one. It starts off small and gets bigger. So that's what you're trying to say, that the arising lamp clears away the darkness. As the light, as the flame gets bigger, the darkness is pushed away, and then it's cleared away by the light. Maybe that's what the opponent means. But Buddhapalita is saying that's still no good, because the arising lamp doesn't make any contact with darkness. The light that is just gradually getting bigger is still the same. It never meets the darkness. Wherever there is light, there is no dark. And the dark is only in the place where there is no light. But there's got to be a boundary. If I'm touching my own hand, if I'm making contact with my hand, I'm not saying they've got to be in exactly the same place. It's just one is on top of the other, or side by side with the other. Anyway, we'll carry on, because we can at least go to Tsongkhapa's further explanations of these verses. We keep going. So then, Buddhapalita's got this obsession with contact now. How then could the darkness be cleared away by a lamp it has not had contact with? So the lamp disappears when the light arises, so there's no chance that they can be contacting each other. And then he says, which is, this verse makes a little bit more sense, number 11, or if the darkness is cleared by a lamp it had no contact with, this one set here will clear away the dark that there is in all the world. So if you say the lamp doesn't have to make contact with the darkness in order to clear it away, contactless, clearing away of dark, like, your contactless payments when you go to the supermarket with your modern credit card, contactless payment, you don't have to touch the thing with your card. You don't have to put your card into the machine. You just hold it near. Takes your money. What's that got to do with it? Come on. Yeah, but if the light doesn't have to contact with the dark in order to clear it away, well, why can't the lamp clear away all the darkness there is in the world? It doesn't have to make contact with it, but it can clear it away without contacting it. So why doesn't one tiny light clear away all the darkness in the world? But if, on the other hand, darkness is cleared away by a lamp it had no contact with, in that case, should not a lamp set here clear away the darkness there is in all the world? What difference could there be that while one place is like another in there being no contact, you should clear away it somewhere and not clear it away elsewhere? Yeah, so if there's no necessity for contact, why should this place have the light cleared away and this place remain in darkness? So that's the most tricky part of the argument, and Shantideva doesn't go into those verses. He leaves them alone. So Shantideva's 9th chapter, that is. But he does mention this verse, doesn't he? Shantideva, when he's talking about some view or other in his presentation of wisdom, he does borrow this example, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Number 12, a lamp, if it illuminates its own and others' entities, then darkness too obscures its own and other entities, no doubt. So that kind of, it gives you something to think about. If you say the lamp illuminates itself and others' entities, then you can say that darkness too obscures its own and others' entities as well, just in the same way. So that's Nagarjuna's teasing challenge. Here, a lamp stands as the antithesis of darkness, so that's the opposite of darkness, light or darkness. Also, if a lamp illuminates its own and others' entities, it no doubt follows that darkness too obscures its own and others' entities. Yet darkness does not obscure its own and others' entities, or if it did so obscure, then just as with the others, darkness should not be observed at all. There would be the non-observation of darkness, perpetual observation of things. Yeah, okay, so the darkness can cover the things on the table. The darkness can cover the pot or the cloth on the table, so you can't see those things. But if you said the darkness covered itself, then the darkness itself should be invisible. So you shouldn't see darkness because it's hiding itself. Well, you can sort of understand that one, can't we? Yeah, if darkness covered itself, or darkness obscured itself, then you shouldn't be able to see darkness. So darkness doesn't obscure itself then, because you can see it. Yeah. So if darkness covered itself up, then everything should be visible all the time, because darkness is hiding itself. So you wouldn't be seen. You'd only see the things. Yet things are not perpetually observed. That's not the case. Therefore, our darkness does not obscure its own and others' entities. So that's kind of refutation by Shantadevi, the person in his wisdom chapter, which the guys here in the basic program are studying. So the light illuminates itself, so mind can know itself. And Shantadevi said, well, if light can illuminate itself, then can darkness obscure itself? And the problem would arise, and you wouldn't be able to see darkness because it's hidden, it's hiding itself. So yeah, that's a little bit more comprehensible. But on the other hand, you can say darkness does obscure the other entities. I'm saying that, darkness does cover up the cloth and the pot and so on, so you can't see them. So why doesn't the light illuminate the other entities? Why the light doesn't illuminate itself, but it illuminates the other entities. The light illuminates the pot and the cloth, just as the darkness covers the pot and cloth and obscures them. But that's nobody bothers worrying about that point. That's just me being awkward. That being so, a lamp, the antithesis of darkness, does not illuminate its own and others' entities either. So what was said above, that like a lamp, arising gives rise to its own and others' entities, is not correct. So if your example is not correct, about the lamp and the illumination, you can forget about arising.
There is another text when Nagarjuna also used the same example in the Vedaya Sutramana. He says that the pramana and prameya, the value cognition in the object, each one doesn't eliminate itself. He used the same example.
Yeah, Jimpa's saying that this it comes up in another text of Nagarjuna. But he's giving a name that I've never heard of. But he's such a scholar, He knows all these fancy texts.
The finely woven.
The finely woven? Well, that was a sutra.
And it's the Vedaya Sutramana from him.
Yeah, okay. It's not something I've really had chance to look at, so I can't really comment, but thank you. So I think what Nagarjuna is trying to say, or in the Tsongkhapa interpretation, which we're going to go on to now, the darkness doesn't conceal itself, and the light doesn't illuminate itself. Whether you're talking conventionally or ultimately, no chance. That's just completely impossible. Just as the darkness cannot hide itself, the light lamp cannot illuminate itself. But the one about the lamp illuminating the other things, and the one about the darkness concealing other things, I think Tsongkhapa will agree that that's true, because that's the way the world sees it. And none of these guys like to go away against the way the world sees things in terms of conventional events, never mind the ultimate truth, but in conventional events, never mind is it suffering or not, not sort of something to do with suffering or something to do with ultimate truth, but in general speaking, if the world thinks that the light illuminates the other objects, or the world thinks that darkness conceals other objects, then you kind of have to go along with that. But that's at the conventional level. Ultimately, you see, Tsongkhapa turns it around to say, well, ultimately the light doesn't illuminate other things, but conventionally it does. Well, doesn't it come out from Nagarjuna's explanations to me from this particular section? But of course, Tsongkhapa's got a lot of experience, and more experience, and you know, he's got this sort of way of making sense of things. So he'll try to explain that now. But what we're saying is that the lamp doesn't inherently illuminate other things, but it does so conventionally. And what is the lamp that does clear away the darkness? It is the arising lamp. That's Nagarjuna, that's Tsongkhapa's position. So even though Nagarjuna and Buddhapalita have denied that, they say it's not the arising lamp that clears away the darkness, because it doesn't have contact with the dark. But you know, Tsongkhapa says, but they're just talking on the ultimate level. Conventionally, the arising lamp clears away the darkness. Yes, the arising lamp. Anyway, if you want to look at that, if anybody's still got the stamina, yeah, the lamp can cut itself. Yes. What does it mean? Well, we can understand that. Like the knife can cut itself. Can a knife cut itself? Well, if you have a very flexible knife like that, you know, you can do that. See, but that's a very sharp piece of, you know, iron or steel, like a razor blade. It's very thin. You know, you can twist it. So, like, oh, look, the knife is cutting itself. What do you say to that, Nagarjuna? And so they'll say, well, look, it's that which is doing the cutting cannot be that which is cut. Okay, this part is doing the cutting, that part is cut. So you could imagine that, you know. Or they say the finger cannot touch itself. Well, you know that this part of the finger can touch that part of the finger, like if you really push it. You've got good joints, you know, not got arthritis. So you could say this part of the finger is touching that one, but that which is doing the touching is not that which is touched. So you could say that. You know, and your teeth, yeah, you know, your teeth are biting each other and biting. But that which is this thing that is doing the biting from the top, it's not biting itself. It's only biting the other tooth, so nothing can bite itself. That which is the biter cannot be the bitten. You know, that very thing that's doing the biting, that very bit. You know, the doer of the action and the object of the action, you know, they have to be different. So that's okay, you know. So then the lamp can't illuminate itself. Well, if you think along those lines. But what about this illuminating other objects? What's so wrong about that? You know, the knife can cut the butter, the knife can cut the bread. So the lamp can illuminate other phenomena. But the knife only conventionally cuts the bread. It doesn't inherently cut the bread. Why not? What's the argument here? So this is on page 25, endnote number 1, lamp illuminations, materials for other consideration. So it's not a conclusion, but it's how Tsongkhapa explains. Commentary from Tsongkhapa's Ocean of Reason, plus further thoughts. So this is my translation. It's not just the published translation. I've tried to get to work it out myself. So this is just a good chance to see how Tsongkhapa tackles these things. Often he takes Chandrakirti's explanations quite, you know, just uses Chandrakirti's explanations without really saying he's doing so. He's just like, this is habit. And then whenever Buddhapalita says something sensible, he just says what Buddhapalita says. And but then in between, he does make his own very helpful comments sometimes. He's not just sort of, you know, explaining what they're saying in more easy language for people who are, you know, reading in Tibetan. But he does give his own points, and he has got his own way of kind of, you know, defending kind of conventional truth. Okay, so verse number 8. Just as a lamp illuminates its own and other entities, arising too may make arise both own and others' entities. Yeah, so that's where the argument starts. So this is he's speaking to the opponent here then. For example, a light being in the nature of illumination, it illuminates itself and other phenomena, pots and the like. Just so, arising being in the nature of arising, it gives rise to itself, both itself and other things. Okay. Answer. Impossible, Number 9. There is no darkness in a lamp and in the place where it is set. How does the lamp illuminate? Illumination's clearing dark. So where's the darkness that's being cleared away? Well, it's illuminating lamp. So that's how they're defining illumination. It's clearing away darkness. I think that's what they accept as being the meaning of illumination: lighting up, clearing away darkness. If it's illuminating, it's got to be clearing darkness. If illumination is through the clearing away of darkness, by the clearing away of what darkness does a lamp illuminate itself? There is no darkness in a lamp, for they, lamp and darkness, are contradictory. The word "and" so that's in the second line, I guess. There is no darkness in a lamp and in the place where it is set. So there's two places where there is no darkness. I think that's all it means here. There is no darkness in a lamp, for they, lamp and darkness, are contradictory. The word "and" indicates the first of the two places where lamp is cleared away. And by the clearing away of what darkness does the lamp illuminate others? So I think it's just saying, why is it saying that? It's just like, okay, the lamp is supposed to clear away darkness within itself and in the place where it is set. So there's no darkness in the lamp. If there's light there cannot be darkness. Well, that makes sense, yeah. If it is all light, then there's no darkness being cleared away. So there's no illumination going on. If you insist that illumination means the clearing away of darkness, illumination has to be actually sort of conquering of darkness, then the lamp's not illuminating itself because it's all light. But then, but by the clearing away what darkness does the lamp illuminate others? In the place where it is set, i.e. the place where its light reaches, there is no darkness either. Itself or others, which does the lamp illuminate them? Yeah, so even if you've got a little light, the light reaches, to the edge of the table or something. One of these primitive lights that they might have had in the London monastery in India. This little dish with a little bit of oil in it and a little bit of cotton as a wick. So if the lamp reaches the light reaches to the edge of the table, on the area of the table, there's no darkness. You can see the pot, you can see the cloth. If they're visible, then you can say, well, there's light there, yes. So that's how you can see them. It may not be bright light as we're used to with electricity, but it's still light. So yeah, well, if the light's there, then the darkness has already gone. So if in the present time when the light is burning, then it's not clearing away any darkness because the darkness already vanished, hasn't it? So while the lamp is burning after the first moment, then it's not illuminating. If you say illuminating is clearing away darkness. It's showing you the path and it's showing you the cloth. But that's not illuminating. Illuminating is clearing away darkness, according to these guys. Holding back the darkness, always clearing away the darkness. Selva, clearing, removing. So then, Tsongkhapa is agreeing with the Buddhapalita or whoever it is, Nagarjuna. The lamp doesn't illuminate itself or others. But the opponent is, give him a chance to say what he wants to say in different words. If there were no inherent clearing away of darkness by lamp, now that inherent is in the text. It's not I'm not adding that inherent. That Tsongkhapa has added the inherent. And he's put it, well, how would he put it in brackets in Tibetan anyway? But it seemed like, that's not in Nagarjuna's text, is it? See? It's not in Buddhapalita's text, but Tsongkhapa is qualifying what Nagarjuna and Buddhapalita are saying by trying to make it clear by saying if we're talking about the inherent clearing away of darkness, which is what the opponent is talking about, always got to accept. If the opponent, when he talks about clearing away of darkness, he thinks everything inherently exists. So he's implicitly got to accept that there is inherent clearing away of darkness by a lamp. If it's clearing away of darkness by a lamp, it's got to be inherent clearing away of darkness by a lamp. So what does that mean? What does it mean, the inherent clearing away of darkness? I'm inherently eating my food. Well, I'm doing it, by my very own power or something? It's within the power of the lamp to clear away the darkness. Well, it is. Well, yes, so that's another thing you got to sort of come back to. If there were no inherent clearing away of darkness by lamp, it would not be suitable to say that the lamp and the places it reaches were free of darkness, because the lamp and the places it reaches become free of darkness through the clearing away of darkness by the arising lamp. The arising lamp, you see. So he says, I'm only talking like the people in the world talk, We do say places become free of darkness. They are free of darkness. And why? Because the light of the lamp has reached them and cleared away the darkness there. Which lamp is it that does it? He says it's the arising lamp. So that's, like the first moments of the lamp. Once the lamp is lit and burning, all the darkness is gone. So those continuing moments of lamp, you can maybe say they don't illuminate, they don't clear away darkness. But the first moments, the arising lamp, like Hannah was trying to think of, the arising lamp, the first moments of the light as it gets strong enough to reach to the edge of the table. So they're the ones, they cleared away the darkness. And if the lamp did not clear away darkness, then, just as when it was not burning, even when it was burning, pots and so forth would not be observed. So that's a good argument. If you say the lamp doesn't clear away the darkness, then even though the lamp's burning, the pot and the cloth should still be invisible, because the lamp hasn't cleared away the darkness. What about that? So the lamp possesses the power of illuminating, which is the clearing away of darkness. And it is the arising lamp that does it. Very good argument. That's by the opponent then. So it can't be, it must be. Not the right answer. But it is kind of correct in a way. It's going along with the way the world sees things. But it's just, if you insist on the inherent existence, that description cannot be true, or something. It can only be true if you put away inherent existence and say, yes, the way the world sees it is like that, but it's only by there being no inherent existence. But we haven't got to that yet. How do we figure that out? So, our criticism to that by the masters Nagarjuna and Buddhapalita was, number 10, how is the darkness cleared away? By means of an arising lamp, when an arising lamp does not make contact with the dark at all. So this was the killer argument, you see. The two, illumination and darkness, do not exist together in one place at one time, and so the two do not make contact. You see, so that's Tsongkhapa saying, if they're going to make contact, they have to exist in one place at one time. But that can only mean side by side. It's not like you put your hand on your right hand on your left hand or something. It only means like they're making contact. So one is right up against the other, right next to each other. So that's what it means to make contact, perhaps. Therefore, when for the two, the arising lamp and darkness, there is no contact by way of its own characteristic, there is no sense in inquiring. How, that is, by what means does the clearing away of darkness by an arising lamp exist by way of its own characteristic? So he's put in this by way of its own characteristics, this inherent existent thing again, hasn't he? So he's kind of allowing that there is contact without contact being by way of its own characteristics. It's conventional contact, but not inherent contact. Is that what he's saying? So you see, now next paragraph, he's accepting a lot of things here. Conventionally, we accept that a lamp clears away darkness. In which case, though, the arising lamp and the darkness, must indeed make contact. So he's going to the arising lamp, yeah? It's the arising lamp that clears away the darkness. The lamp clears away the darkness. How? It's the arising lamp that does it. And the arising lamp and the darkness, do they make contact now? Well, however, at the time of the arising lamp, there is no lamp. So it is not necessary that the lamp, make contact with the darkness. So it's clearing away the lamp, the arising lamp is clearing away the darkness without making contact with it. And they said that was impossible. For those who assert that clearing away darkness by a lamp is established by way of its own characteristic, in their case, when the arising lamp and the darkness make contact, at that time the lamp would have to exist, but it does not. Since for them, not even a rising lamp makes contact with the darkness, the reasoning shows that in their case it is not tenable that a lamp clears away the darkness. Is thus. So he's saying we can show how the lamp clears away the darkness, but they can't. But how has he made that little? How has he made that little move? You know, it's all right for us because we're into just conventional clearing away of darkness. And those guys are into inherent clearing away of darkness. They go nowhere. What's the explanation? Well, I think, we say the arising lamp clears away the darkness. I'm sure that's Tsongkhapa's position, conventionally. So we say the arising lamp and the darkness do make contact. It's the arising lamp that's pushing the darkness away. See, that's the one that's pushing the darkness away. But that's all very well. But then he says the very next sentence, however, at that time with the arising lamp, there is no lamp. Yeah. So that it's not necessary that the lamp make contact with the darkness. So that's difficult. For those who assert that clearing away darkness by lamp is established by way of its own characteristic, in their case, when the arising lamp and the darkness make contact, at that time the lamp would have to exist, but it does not. So that makes a little bit of sense to me. Does it make any sense to you, Anila? Anila, we need your help now. Calling on the top scholars. Did you hear me, Anila?
Yeah,
Mute.
no, I'm not mute.
Good. So does that make any sense to you? In their case, when the arising lamp and darkness make contact, at that time, the lamp would have to exist, but it does not.
Where is it, Gisela, please?
Bottom of page 26.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's maybe you haven't been following closely enough, Anila, to help me there. But in the last couple of sentences, in the middle of the last paragraph, for those who assert that clearing away darkness by a lamp is established by way of its own characteristic, in their case, that's the opponents then, when the arising lamp and the darkness make contact, at that time the lamp would have to exist, but it does not. So at the time of the arising lamp, the lamp for them has to exist, but for us it does not. So does that mean anything to you, Anila? Well, we have discussed this before, when I taught it in northern France. Like if you're going to take the inherently existent view, then if you say that the seed, the sprouting somehow arises inherently from the seed, then we ended up saying that the sprout has to be there at the time of its own arising. You remember me saying that, anyway? Yeah, that's because you have a dependent relationship, of the sprout depending on the act of arising. But once an inherent, a dependent relationship is inherently existent, then it seems like the two bits, the dependent and dependent, they both have to be there at the same time. So if I'm, like I keep saying, my common example, if I'm sitting on a chair and I inherently depend upon the chair, it inherently supports me, then like the chair has got to be there all the time. So I've got to be like inherently supported by the chair. So wherever I go, I'll always have this chair stuck to my backside. Even if and I said when I put me in my coffin, at the end of my life, this chair would have to go in the coffin with me. This is my inherent support, so I would have to have a very big coffin. And even in my next life, I'd have to be born with that chair.
It's painful for your mom.
Very painful. So that's something of what this the way Tsongkhapa is interpreting the argument. Buddhapalita and Nagarjuna don't give you much help. They just say, I don't know, you're supposed to understand what they're talking about, or all that just comes out in the oral commentary. It doesn't come out in the root text. That's what Tsongkhapa is trying to say. They make the distinction. So if the clearing away of the darkness, or the action of clearing away of darkness by the lamp, is inherently established by way of its own characteristic, so when the arising lamp and the darkness make contact, so at the time of the arising lamp, the lamp would have to exist. Yeah, because the lamp and its arising are in inherent relationship of dependent and dependent upon. The lamp depends upon the arising, and the arising of a lamp depends upon there being a lamp. So those two are inherently dependent. So there won't be any arising of a lamp unless there's a lamp at the end of it. And the lamp cannot be there unless there is the arising of a lamp. So that's an inherent relationship. But once any inherent relationship is inherently existent, any dependent relationship, if you try to say that's inherently existent, then it's kind of locked in that relationship. That both parts of the dependent, supporter and supported have to be there all the time, just supporting each other, because that's in the very nature of the object, that it's depending on this. So for them then, even at the time of the arising lamp, there would have to be the lamp. And if the lamp were there wouldn't be any darkness there. Because if the lamp was there, the darkness would already disappeared. So at the time of the arising lamp, for them, the darkness would already have to have disappeared. So the arising lamp could not be dissipating or clearing away the darkness, because at the time of the arising lamp, the lamp already have to exist. And so how would it clear away the darkness? Because darkness is already gone if the lamp is there. So you struggle like that, but then it says, but for us, we do agree that the arising lamp and the darkness do make contact. However, at the time of the arising lamp, there is no lamp, but that's really tricky. But I guess it could mean that, you know, there's this little tiny flame that's it's growing, and it's only a lamp when it becomes the full size flame. So at the time of the rising up, there's a little darkness, there's a little light, you know, pushing away the darkness. By the time the flame has reached its full size, then the darkness is already gone. So the rising lamp is the one that's pushing away and clearing away the darkness. But by the time the light has reached its full flame, then all the darkness we're talking about here is gone. You know, any darkness. So the rising lamp is making contact with the darkness, but the full lamp isn't, because the full lamp is just it's cleared away as much darkness as it can clear away already. So it's not clearing out any more darkness. It's just light. Yeah, it's reached the maximum of darkness. It's been cleared away. So then it stops at its full size, and then that's the lamp. That's when it's a lamp, you know, and that's not doing any clearing away of darkness. It's just because where the light is, there is no dark to be cleared away. So if you really think about it, you know, and puzzle over it, then maybe eventually you get to some understanding. But you know, Nagarjuna and Buddhapalita are not really being quite obscure in their, you know, how much explanation they're giving you. But they're really focusing on the ultimate nature of things, and you know, Tsongkhapa's coming in a bit in with the conventional nature of things as well, you know. So he's got a slightly different kind of, you know, emphasis. Oh dear me! I've got to stop there. So there's just a couple of more paragraphs of Tsongkhapa's explanation, where it starts talking about other things like wisdom and ignorance. He also talks about the magnet, you know, the magnet and attracting the ion. He's got some other interesting examples, but I don't think I managed to translate the whole chapter or the whole section. Just the bits that you know, might have been a bit helpful. So it's like that tonight.
Is the last week the next one? Just as a reminder, the last one.
Yeah. Sorry to put you all asleep, but
No, we hope that we're gonna resume that as soon as possible, Geshe. We
Yeah,
want the whole text now, all the chapters. We won't give up.
good. I'm glad for the encouragement. Well, think about that one over the week, and we'll come back to it because there's a couple of more paragraphs to finish. But then, yeah, there are some more arguments, plenty of good arguments to come in this chapter. You know, a bit more ones that I feel I have got a bit more, you know, a bit more of a grip on. This one has slipped away from me, but you know, the other three endnotes, or 3 or 4, they've got some good arguments in there, which, you know, not common ones that you find in the sort of basic explanations of emptiness, but some extra ones are going to push you in the right direction. Anyway, we see Anna's gone to sleep. She's gone to bed. We all better give up now. Okay.
So much, Geshe.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.